All right, time for some potentially painful honesty here. Okay, there are a lot of married men who genuinely love their wives and they still look at porn. Now, not casually, not proudly, but secretly, habitually, and they hate it, okay? They feel like frauds. They feel like there's something broken inside of them. And they can't figure out why, if they love their wife and are committed to their marriage, they keep going back to porn. And so if that's you, then this video is going to help you finally understand what is actually happening here. So the big lie we have to first dispel is that primal lust is the thing that's driving your porn addiction. You see, most men, they assume that porn, it's about sex, it's about lust, right? Like the reason they watch it is simple. They're just too horny. They're just too visual. They're just too weak to attractive women. And listen, I totally get it, okay? Like there's an obvious, completely undeniable, purely sexual component to porn. And yes, obviously guys want sex. And so that's for sure a contributing factor. But the big mistake is thinking that it is only or even primarily a sexual problem. Because once you believe that porn is just about the sexual component, you trap yourself in shame. You start thinking, what the heck's wrong with me? Like, do I not really love my wife? Like, is it possible for me to even be faithful? And you might even start questioning like spiritual truths. That was one of the things that hit me is like, I was taught all this stuff when I was young and I had, these raging hormones as a teenager and, my pastor's telling me like, hey, you can never watch porn, you can never masturbate. And I'm like, that seems impossible. There's no way to do that, right? And so it can really just mess you up from the inside out when you find yourself helpless to these desires. And if you're in this situation, you're married and your wife finds out, well, she'll probably look at it the same way. Like it's some perverse rejection of her, right? But from what I found from working with so many guys over the past decade, is that that's not really what's going on here. And the truth is that porn is not driven by lust so much as it's driven by inadequacy. Porn is about validation down at its deepest root, especially when it's a habitual, compulsive sort of thing. When you watch porn, your brain isn't just getting turned on. It's getting tricked into thinking that you are high status, right? It's basically a status simulation. For like a few minutes when you're watching porn, you're plugged into it. Your limbic system, your mammalian primal part of your brain believes that you are engaged in an evolutionarily powerful act. It thinks you're reproducing. And, we experience that as feeling desirable, powerful, wanted. Because that pretty girl on the screen is giving you attention. She's giving you that access to her body, right? And so that primal part of our brain processes this as intensely validating. And it releases a huge amount of dopamine, like you just won the championship. But obviously the issue here is that this is all fake, right? It's virtual validation. And unless you understand that porn is a substitute for status, you will never solve this problem. So if we want to find the solution, we got to break things down on a deeper level, okay? And we have to look at it on the level of objectification. Now, some guys are going to want to tune out at this point because they've been, guys have been lambasted since feminism came on about objectifying women. And, I'm going to have to say, I agree. Like, it's wrong to objectify women. It's wrong to just turn them into pure objects because I feel like that dehumanizes them, okay? So the more that you can cultivate goodwill and see women as actual people, the easier it's going to be for you to recover. But there's a whole flip side to that equation, because when you're using porn, especially in this compulsive way we're describing here, you're really dealing with an issue where you're objectifying yourself. So when you reach for porn for this simulated status, what's really happening is that you're treating yourself like an empty trophy case. And unless you can constantly fill that trophy case with wins like, money, sex, praise, performance, friends, attention, whatever, you feel like you're not good enough, right? And so porn gives you a cheap way to feel the win of being important, right? But the only reason this hits so hard and it's so compelling is because you're seeing yourself as that trophy case to begin with, that you're equating your worth with these different metrics of status, so that like when your finances take a hit, maybe you fail to get that deal at work, maybe you get into a fight with someone, a friend stands you up or something like that, you feel less than, right? Your trophy case feels a little more empty. And so what you're going to be inspired to do then is go fill that trophy case back up. And if you can't get it immediately with real stuff, well, then porn offers you a super simple and cheap way to get that feeling, at least obviously temporarily. And it always just makes you feel worse after the fact when you wake up and you realize, that was fake, that was stupid, and that actually just made me further from who I really want to be. So how do we break this cycle? Well, it all comes down to dignity. Dignity is the key. All right. And what is dignity? Dignity is basically saying that you already have worth, that you have an intrinsic, infallible worth, that no status fluctuation can take away from you. You're not just some empty trophy case. You already are a complete and total perfect trophy. And I think, the easiest way to tap into this is through spiritual belief. Like me as a Christian, it's about believing that, regardless of what my status has been, which is objectively one as a sinner, okay, like I'm a sinner, but Jesus still died for me. So regardless of my imperfection, I have an intrinsic worth, an intrinsic God-given worth given to me by being made in his image. And when you start tapping into this is where you can reject that trophy case mentality, where that just turns you into this dopamine hunting validation machine. Okay. You don't need to live like that. You don't need to live like you are some scorecard. And when you can really internalize this, it frees you up tremendously. Okay. Like one of the things I've seen happen repeatedly, when I have these real, heart to heart, deep talks with guys who are trying to quit porn, a common scenario I see is where a guy will see a pretty woman, attractive woman. And I ask him well, what's your immediate reaction to that woman? And they'll say, lust. But if we go deeper into it, what really is there? They say, I actually feel like inadequate. I don't feel good enough. I feel this kind of anxiety. And what I found is that really what's going on in their head is every time they see a beautiful woman, they're almost taking that as evidence that, since that woman's not giving me attention or having sex with me, that's just evidence that I'm not good enough. And it's an insane way to live, but so many guys actually have that experience if they're being honest with themselves. And so by learning how to embrace your dignity, what that does is it frees you from all that bullshit. It frees you from this need of turning to this security blanket of sexual illusory, validation that keeps you hooked on porn. So instead of subconsciously thinking when you're feeling down, I need to find a way to feel like I'm better, right? And then reaching toward porn, you need to instead start to think about, hey, I'm already good. How can I better honor the goodness that's already inside of me? And if you need a tip of where to start, then I highly suggest you check out my Craving Kill Box training. Okay. And this training is designed exactly for guys like you who are already doing a lot right. If you're running a business, you're raising a family, you're being productive, you're living a life that matters, but you keep slipping into porn as a release valve any single time that something doesn't go the way that you want, then this training will walk you through one simple calendar-based shift that will help you kill your cravings before they even start. And this method is going to give your brain what it needs to feel stable and secure without turning toward porn. And it's going to allow you to do it without guilt, without shame, without white knuckling, just a smarter strategy rooted in self-respect that'll allow you to naturally show up as the man that you want to be. So if you're interested in this training, just click the link in the description, watch the 15-minute training, and take your first step to quitting porn for good. Not because you finally earned your worth, but because you finally started living like it was never in question.